they're suing because they said, well, we should want you to shut up about us telling you to shut up about Israel. Like, that's a meta irony in there.
It is.
Yeah, the second one might be slightly helpful. They're suing you guys because they're saying they were defamed when you called them biased in favor of Israel. But they're suing you for being biased. So couldn't you just sue them back and say, if we're guilty, then you're guilty?
That's true. Yeah, how dare you suggest that our reporting is biased?
Everybody check out Drop Site News. Just Ryan, you guys are working on amazing stories. It's not just about Israel or Epstein. Check out what they're writing about Venezuela, the UAE, and so many other countries. Joining me is Ryan Grimm. He is one of the founders of Drop Site News, which has been doing brilliant reporting on really almost all of the international stories, including Israel, and has been doing great reporting on the Epstein files. Ryan's also the author of We've Got People, The Squad, This Is Your Country on Drugs. He's co-host of Breaking Points, former TYT contributor. We've Got People, Young Turks and Young Turks fans are in that book, so that's another good reason why you should check it out. But Ryan, welcome back, brother.
Always good to be here.
All right, good to have you. All right, so I want to start with all the reporting that you guys have been doing about Epstein. So you've uncovered all of these amazing emails where Epstein is in the middle of the Iran-Contra affair. As far as I know, the number of civilians in the middle of the Iran-Contra affair is 0. So he's trying to get Israel to buy cyber weapons. He's trying to get America to bomb Syria and Iran on behalf of Israel. He's got Israeli spies staying there. He's got Ehud Barak, the former prime minister. This thing's over. You guys proved it beyond a shadow of a doubt, yet no one else in news is following up on your reporting. So what in the world's going on?
You tell me. Yeah, it's an interesting question, and what's interesting is that there's a lot more that we can still uncover. And we have a lot of stories that are still in the works. The documents, the correspondence that we're basing our reporting on, are public. Now we have some, excellent, researchers and some excellent tech folks who are, who have made it, searchable and have really kind of helped us in ways that, have gotten us kind of over the hump. But we don't have more resources than the New York Times or the Washington Post or Bloomberg. So, and I don't know. I think it's just too much. It's just too uncomfortable for the press to go there.
Yeah, it's interesting because people are seeing it anyway. Because online media is so much stronger these days than it used to be. So I was talking to a supporter of Israel today, and he's like, "Well, obviously Epstein was an asset." Right? He's like, "What do you want me to say?"
That seems clear,
right? Yeah. So okay, but you're generally very well respected in journalist circles in DC. That's my experience, having seen people interact with you throughout the years, both in person and online, etc. So like with a David Sirota, who's just, no offense to you, just as good as you, great journalist, right?
Better even, he's tremendous, yeah.
Yeah, but with him, they're always like, Sirota. Like they've always hated him, right? But with you, they're like, oh, Ryan broke a story about, Kavanaugh, for example, and that became one of the biggest stories in the nation, right? So they take that seriously. In this case, are you getting any feedback from them? Like, we'd love to cover it, but we can't, or how dare you, I can't believe you turned into an anti-Semite, or anything?
No, rank and file reporters and just the people that I know in the industry have all said, like, this is great work. Wish we were doing this. This is incredible stuff. And the problem for some of these news organizations is, I think that the bigger obvious problems are the ones that drive it. But within a news organization, you might have hundreds of reporters, but only a few of them could be on the Epstein beat. You know what I mean? They might want to write about it, but it's just outside of their beat. There's an interesting distinction that some newsrooms draw between political reporting and national security reporting. And if you've noticed, the Epstein coverage is in the desk of the political bureaus in this country. So, what is the impact for Democrats in the midterms or Republicans in the midterms? What is the relationship between the files and President Trump? What about Epstein and the Clintons? And how does this affect voters' attitudes towards the parties? Literally the political teams are the ones that are assigned to cover the Epstein beat. The national security teams are distinct in general from at these major papers and at the networks, and they are not allowed to. They're not supposed to be covering this because it's in the realm of the politics, and so that keeps it also clean. Like keeps it out of the hairier questions of who was he working for, what was he actually doing when he wasn't doing his child sex trafficking. So that's kind of how it functionally keeps the stories, keeps them pumping out the kinds of stories that you read, like the salacious. They're good stories, like Larry Summers doing gross things and he has to step down. Like that's a good story. Although I think actually the Harvard Crimson led the way on that, not the actual news media. The news media followed the Harvard Crimson there. Right. So that's part of it.
Yeah.
Like that's how they functionally divide it. But there really isn't a divide. Like if you think about it, that goes back to how these newspapers understand their relationship with American empire and American power. That it's separate from politics.
Yeah.
That's not something that
look, Ryan, I think your explanation. I think your explanation is excellent, and I'm going to add to it, but it's just an excuse. I don't think that they actually believe it. For example, yeah, when you talk about, hey, when you guys are covering bills, well, I've asked reporters in DC, why don't you ever talk about money in politics? Because what drives the legislation is the donors, pretty much 100%. So when you do a story that doesn't include the donors, it's kind of like a fantastical story. It's made up, it's fiction, because it doesn't get to the number one issue. They go, well, that's not my beat. Money in politics is not my beat. Right. Congress is my beat. Well, then if you just kind of like isolate money in politics so it's not in anyone's beat, and you isolate Epstein so it's almost not in anyone's beat, that's a perfectly convenient excuse not to cover the two giant stories. Right. So that's a clever way that they've structured it. But why did they structure it that way? Because they don't want to cover those issues. And in the case of Epstein and what Drop Site News has proven definitively, well, there's no question that after you read the Drop Site stories that Epstein works with intelligence agencies. He could. There are plenty of other questions. He could be an asset. He could be an agent. He could be something else, but is he working with intelligence? No question. He could be CIA, he could be Mossad, he could be both. I don't know, right? And was the actual sex trafficking part of that scheme to work with intelligence agencies? That's not perfectly clear, right? Right. And but the fact that he was with intelligence is crystal clear. And I think that what a lot of the editors think is, well, if people find out either the CIA or Israel launched a plot to rape young American girls to get blackmail on political figures to manipulate them, they will either hate the CIA or Israel, and we don't want them hating either one of those things while we're pretending to do objective news.
On a personal, professional level, that's the kind of story that can end your career if you might not even have to make a mistake on it. It could just straight up end your career. If you do make a mistake, just a conventional, you get a detail wrong here or there, that could be the end of you. There's room for error in your standard political stories. The horse race, the who's up, who's down. Like you screw one of those stories up, hey man, brush yourself off. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll get them tomorrow. That's just how this goes. If you screw up a story about Epstein and his ties to the CIA or Israel, you're never working again. And even if you don't screw it up, you might not be working again.
Yeah, so Ryan, you're saying out loud what people are not allowed to say. I've said it out loud, now you've said it out loud, which is, who are we kidding? If you do a story that's critical of Israel, your chance of getting fired is sky high. It's not guaranteed, but it is a significant percentage. even if you get all the details right, and doesn't look. You're closer to the reporters than I am, but I know a ton of reporters. It is my experience, both having worked at MSNBC and current TV and radio and online in every aspect. And I'm curious of your take on it. I mean, you kind of just stated it already, but I want people at home to understand it. My sense is, talking to all those reporters, they give me looks like the other day I was at ABC and I said, you can't really cover Epstein being connected to Israel, right? And the reporter went like she didn't even want to say anything out loud. Like there's a palpable fear among the American press that if you say anything wrong about Israel or perceived wrong, you're done for life. Is that your experience as well?
In general, it's in that direction, yeah. And there's all sorts of tripwires when it comes to coverage of Israel that have been set up over the years, where reporters or politicians, for that matter, you might trip over one, and all of a sudden, then they didn't even realize they're not even doing it. And all of a sudden, they're being told that they're anti-Semitic or whatever. There was that amazing moment in 2018 when AOC was doing that firing line interview, and in response to one of the questions, she used the word Palestine, and the interviewer stopped her and was like, and I was later told somebody who got in her ear, like got in the interviewer's ear from the control room, like, stop her on the word Palestine, stop her. So it's like 20 people in this studio against this one candidate. And Pouncin is like, did you say the word Palestine? What do you mean by that? And you could see this deer in the headlights look that AOC got, where she's like, it's going through my, like, did I say something wrong? Like, did I step on a tripwire? What, like, how is this wrong? What is wrong here? And she just wanted to move on from there. And that's how a lot of the reporters feel as well. It's like, there's a lot else I want to cover. Let's just move on.
Yeah. And that's exactly how Israel intimidates and bullies our press into never writing anything critical of Israel. So they just, and part of the reason they don't tell you that is because if they told you that, they'd be fired. Right, so that's the same tripwire. And I want to go to one of the consequences for one of your reporters in a second, but one more thing for the audience to know is that the tripwires sometimes are accidentally there, and sometimes they're kind of there on purpose. So for example, 94% of Congress, according to a Guardian piece, gets money from AIPAC or the Israeli lobby. But if you say that 94% of Congress gets money from Israel, you'll be labeled an anti-Semite, and they'll say that's a trope of Jews controlling Washington. But nobody said Jews, we said Israel, the government of Israel, and the forces that are trying to help the government of Israel is doing that.
And then they'll go a layer on top of that and say, well, how dare you? These are Americans who are pro-Israel.
Yeah,
it's not Israel.
Right, of course.
It's like, well,
and that's another tripwire.
Right? You're in constant coordination.
Yeah, and then you'll say,
well, yes, technically it's Americans. So exactly. So, and then the reporter who's just starting out or wants to rise up the chain, like, what, forget it.
Yeah, you'll say, Israel killed 20,000 children. Well, that's true, that's a fact, but blood libel. But wait a minute, nobody said anything about drinking blood of children. That's mental, that is an anti-Semitic trope from the past, but nobody said that. You're just using that as a way to hide. Honestly, I think they use Jewish Americans as human shields, and they hide behind them.
I saw some MAGA guy, I think it was Jack Posobiec, or however you say his last name, call criticism of ICE a blood libel recently. Like, oh my God, we've gone around the bend with this. Like, how is that? It's just become like a phrase you now throw out for criticism that you don't like.
Yeah, absurd. So now, tell us about what's going on with the BBC. So Owen does a story about the BBC. Well, I'll let you tell. You tell us what happened and what the reaction was.
Well, he had been working on this investigation for a while, and he reached out to us. It was an investigation into bias inside the BBC when it comes to their coverage of Gaza and the West Bank, and he had many BBC insiders who wanted to speak to him, but he knew that there was a high likelihood that he was going to get sued if he ran this piece. And we Jeremy and I and Nausica, we said, well, that's what we're here for. Like, that's why we were set up, so that there's an institution that is willing to publish stories that are fair and accurate and hard hitting, but that other people won't publish because of either fear of professional consequences or fear of litigation. Like, so if we don't do this, like we don't have a point. So we're like, let's do this. We lawyered it to hell, made sure it was as fair as it could possibly be. Everybody's got an opportunity to respond, publish it. And sure enough, he's getting sued by one of the editors who was named in the story. And the lawyers behind this editor are UK lawyers for Israel. So he's deep-pocketed attorneys on the other side of this, and they're only suing him, and they're only suing him in the UK. They're not suing us directly, because in the United States, if they tried to sue us in the United States, the case would be thrown right out immediately. But the UK libel laws are much crazier, so they feel like they have a chance to win there. But we had pledged, like, when we published it, if you get sued, we'll back you in court. So it's still winding its way through this Byzantine UK defamation hearing. I'm getting a real education in how interesting that is, and how set up it is for plaintiffs to be able to say that even if there isn't anything incorrect in the story, they still feel hurt by it and harmed by it. And so they then can still sue. I believe that we're going to win, and I think it'll be an important case to win. And I think it would be a very important case to lose as well. Because if you can't say that the BBC is biased towards Israel when it comes to their reporting on Gaza and the West Bank, then you can't say anything. Because that's the most straightforwardly true and obvious statement that I can even think of when it comes to the BBC's coverage.
Yeah, I'm curious about that case. That's another case where they're using a second weapon, and I want to explain that in a second. But in terms of the details of that case, what did Owen allege that BBC was doing? And is the BBC saying that's factually incorrect, outrageous, right, we never aired any of the things he's saying? Or are they saying it's relatively true, but our feelings were hurt?
The latter, for the most part. They're saying that it's inaccurate to say that they're biased. Like, that's the only inaccuracy that they are claiming exists in the 10,000 plus word story. Most people would not consider that to be a fact that is correct or incorrect. Most people would consider that to be a subjective opinion of, an informed subjective opinion. Like, he spoke with more than a dozen, current and also many former BBC journalists who believed that their coverage, that what they were seeing on the ground was not being reflected in the coverage because it was being distorted up the editorial process. Like, that was their belief, and that's what he reported. They're claiming that is that they are wrong, that is incorrect. So it's very interesting, because in the U.S., you can imagine that even today, like, that would be thrown out. They said, how on earth are you even bringing a case here? Like, this is what people say. This is their experience. They literally worked there. Their quote unquote lived experience. Yeah. You can disagree. You can have your say. You can be quoted saying you disagree. You can give examples of why it's not the case. But it's well within the rights of a publisher to publish these opinions. I believe that's true, not just in the US, but also in the UK. And I really hope that we get all the way to the end of this and are able to prove that.
So Ryan, I want to note two ironies here, and one maybe that it helps you, but let's see. One is they say, well, the editors of the BBC seem to have told these reporters to shut up about Israel, and now they're suing because they said, well, we should want you to shut up about us telling you to shut up about Israel. Like, that's a meta irony in there.
It is.
Yeah, the second one might be slightly helpful. They're suing you guys because they're saying they were defamed when you called them biased in favor of Israel. But they're suing you for being biased. So couldn't you just sue them back and say, if we're guilty, then you're guilty?
That's true. Yeah, how dare you suggest that our reporting is biased?
Yeah, I think you should do a countersuit, because that way
it's outrageous.
Yeah, either way you win.
Yeah, right. Or fair point. Okay. I'm jumping right on the the lawyer chain. The problem is every time you, as you know, every time you talk to these lawyers, there goes another couple $1,000. So this better work,
brother.
Otherwise, I'm hitting you up for the.
All right,
that didn't work. That'll be 2,500, Jenk.
Okay, we got to go, Ryan.
For the 5-minute interview, for the 5-minute meeting with the lawyers.
But seriously, guys. So one way is editors, producers, executives go, don't talk about Israel, otherwise your job is in jeopardy. The second way is what Ryan is referring to here. Anna was on with Alan Dershowitz on a segment. And he kept saying, "Oh, I want the Epstein files released because I want the names of the victims." And we're like, why do you want the names of the victims public? That's the one thing everyone agrees should not be made public. He's like, I want to sue them. When we should have the right to sue them. Because lawsuits are another weapon for Israel first. If we can't get you fired, or even if we do get you fired, then we're going to sue you on top, so that we not only cut off your means of survival, like literally, having an income, but then we put an enormous amount of debt on your head, and especially because you won't be able to hire a lawyer, and we have all the top lawyers on our side. So there is this concerted effort to pulverize any critic of Israel in America and the West. And ironically, if you point that out, they go, aha! That's another one of those tripwires and tropes, etc. So it's deeply frustrating. And for you guys to do all the brilliant and brave reporting that you've done on it is sorely needed. So everybody check out Drop Site News. Just Ryan, you guys are working on amazing stories. It's not just about Israel or Epstein. Check out what they're writing about Venezuela, the UAE, and so many other countries. But give us something hot from today. What's Drop Site News working on?
Oh, amazing piece today by Iona Craig, who's one of the best reporters who's covered Yemen ever. What's going on between Saudi Arabia and the UAE right now is going to change the politics of the region for 10, 20 years ahead. There was this tight relationship between Saudi and the UAE where they were reshaping the Middle East kind of in their image, and then linking up with Israel through the UAE through the Abraham Accords. And the UAE started believing basically that it was kind of like the Israel of the Arab world, and that rules didn't apply to it. They have fueled the genocide in Sudan. They fueled really the breakup of Libya. They've sowed chaos all throughout Syria, and finally in Yemen they started fighting with the Saudis in southern Yemen. The Houthis control northern Yemen, they control southern, and the Saudis were like, hold on a second. Oh, no, this is not happening. They started bombing the UAE. The UAE's entire Yemen project, what they've been working on for 10 or 15 years, ended in 48 hours. Now, a bunch of their allied officials are now stuck in God knows where in Riyadh, because Mohammed bin Salman did this thing where he invites people to negotiate and then just locks them up, like he did with the rich folks and the rich Saudis and the Ritz. He did it, remember, with the Lebanese prime minister, invited him to Riyadh and then just locked him up and made him announce he's resigning. He just did that to like 50 of these UAE, basically like proxies. And so now the entire, that entire structure that has been built up over the last 10, 15 years is crumbling. So that Iona Craig's story is awesome. I would suggest people go check that one out.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that one because I was reading it earlier today and I was thinking,
it's crazy, right?
Yeah, UAE and Saudi Arabia split up and attack each other. I did not see that coming because they're usually a tag team in the Middle East, and a lot of people don't know that they secretly support Israel. And so their leadership does, and they don't care about the Palestinians at all. So like there's just brilliant reporting all around there, and that is a fascinating development in Yemen. So we'll see how that goes. And by the way, I mean, the Saudis invite you over and then kidnap you. The Israelis are like, oh yeah, peace negotiations, and just kill you. Yeah, so what great allies we have.
Yeah, watch yourself. Yeah.
So be careful if you got invited to anywhere, including a wedding. Ask him if it's a red one. Ryan Grim from Drop Site News. Obviously, as you can tell from this interview, you should be checking out Drop Site News. All right, thank you, Ryan. We appreciate you as always.
Thanks so much, Cenk.